into Southeastern CaroLINES. I'm your host, Caroline Fenton, and I'm here every Saturday morning bringing you the SEC slate of the day, my betting picks, any advice that you may need to make some money on the SEC slate of the day. And please excuse the fact that I am drenched. I walked over here in the rain, but it's anything you got to do to make your way to 312 Pizza Company, and I'm here every Saturday morning at 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. I appreciate them for having me on every week and for sponsoring this show. If you need a place to hang out today, if you want to grab some pizza, if pizza's not your thing, they have plenty of other great Chicago favorites on the menu. They have thick crust, thin crust, anything you could possibly imagine. They have it here at 312 Pizza Company, plus a long list of local beers. So make sure to come out to 312 Pizza Company today to watch the games, come out throughout the week. It's a great place to hang out. It's personally my favorite pizza in Germantown. But let's get into it. Got a great SEC slate of the day. This is actually the most robust SEC slate that we've seen in quite some time, given all of the bye weeks over the past 2 weeks. But we're back in action. And with one big game today, Mississippi State at number 17, Auburn. Now, this entire season, Mississippi State's kind of been on my no-bet list because I never really know what to expect from Mississippi State. I don't know if their defense is going to completely shut the other team's offense down like they did against Arkansas and Texas A&M. And I don't know if they're just going to completely lay an egg, which they seem to do very often. But they're going into Auburn, and Mississippi State's coming off a very narrow loss at Arkansas, 31-28, by no fault of Will Rogers. Mississippi State's quarterback, Will Rogers, has been going off as of late. 36-48, 417 yards, 4 touchdowns, and just 1 interception against Arkansas. Had himself a day. And this passing game continues to get stronger and stronger every week from Will Rogers and Mississippi State. And it's kind of what we expect from a Mike Leach air raid offense. And I think that Will Rogers just needed a little bit of time to settle into this offense. And that's exactly what we've seen from him the past couple of weeks. He just seems to improve every week. He's hitting over 75% of his throws with 3 or more touchdowns in 6 games. He's just been fantastic. But he's going to have a huge challenge this week. Auburn's defense is stout. But they've had quarterbacks throwing them. Matt Corral, Max Johnson, Sean Clifford at Penn State. They were each able to throw for over 300 yards. And you kind of expect that from Matt Corral. Sean Clifford's been great so far this season, but Max Johnson has been kind of a hot and cold quarterback. He came in behind Miles Brennan, originally coming into this season as a backup for LSU, and he's definitely had some growing pains. So Auburn letting Max Johnson throw for over 300 yards against them is a little bit of a red flag for me. But the Mississippi State defense is so hot and cold. I mean, they held Zach Calzada to just 135 yards. Isaiah Spiller put up 100 yards, but overall, the A&M offense didn't have a ton of answers for Mississippi State. But last week, Arkansas ran for over 200 yards, a season high against Mississippi State. So here, I mean, Auburn's defense I absolutely trust way more. But I'm going to take Mississippi State plus 5.5. It's kind of a narrow spread, but Mississippi State's passing offense will absolutely keep this close. Ultimately, Auburn has too many weapons. I mean, Bo Nix has been playing the best football of his career so far, and Auburn's going to want to bounce back from their loss against Texas A&M last week. So I think that Auburn gets the win here, but Mississippi State keeps it close. I'm thinking it's about field goal, but I'm going to take Mississippi State plus 5.5 here. Georgia going into Tennessee, the number 1 team ranked in the country. Georgia going into Knoxville. Now, neither team has seen one like the other. Georgia's handedly has the best defense in the country, one of the best defenses that I've seen in some time. But Tennessee has the quickest offense that I have ever seen. And talent-wise, Georgia hasn't faced too many playmakers. DJ Uiagalelei, you could say, is probably the best quarterback that they faced so far this season, although he's not necessarily playing like it. I think DJ Uiagalelei has the better skills of any quarterback that they have faced this season, but Hendon Hooker is probably the most effective passer, probably one of the biggest playmakers on Georgia's schedule, which I didn't necessarily expect going into the season. I thought that, Tennessee would just be a little bit speed bump for Georgia on their season, but I think that Hendon Hooker in this quick up-tempo Tennessee offense is going to show Georgia's defense. It's going to give them a little bit of trouble. I mean, they're totaling 2,352 yards, of offense, 21 passing touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. That's Hendon Hooker's season so far. He's completing 69% of his passes, added 4 rushing touchdowns on top of that. I mean, Hendon Hooker has, since taking over the starting job since Joe Milton got hurt, he has been outstanding for the Vols. But at the end of the day, Georgia's defense is just so good. No one has scored more than 13 points on Georgia. That was Kentucky just a few weeks ago. Through 9 games, they've only allowed 5 touchdowns. Now, UAB got a pick 6 on them, but 5 offensive touchdowns. Georgia's only giving up 230 yards a game, almost-ish 4 yards per play. The teams they're playing are averaging fewer than 7 points per game. This Georgia defense is just something else. But, I mean, the Tennessee offense is going to get them a little bit of trouble, but I think ultimately Georgia wins this game because the Vols just don't have a strong enough defense. Teams are converting close to half of their third down tries against Tennessee. And even though Georgia's offense isn't nearly as talented as their defense, you know, their formula is to play strong roughneck defense and to run the ball. But, I mean, Georgia's offense has got plenty of power now. Stetson Bennett has gotten most of the work the last few weeks, threw for over 255 yards and 2 touchdowns against Missouri, which, you know, Missouri's defense is, you know, Georgia's is the best. Missouri's is the absolute worst. But, I mean, Georgia's offense is ranking 44th in the nation in total offense. They're averaging over 38 points per game, not yards. 38 points per game. So I think that this Georgia defense overshadows what they've been able to do on offense. What they're doing on offense isn't elite, but what they're doing on offense is incredibly solid, and their defense can pick up for it on the other side. So as good as Georgia is, they haven't faced one of an offense of Tennessee's quality this season. I think that Tennessee is going to be able to put up more points than any opponent so far this season. But, I mean, I still think that Georgia wins big. I'm going to take Tennessee plus the 20.5 here, which is a massive spread. And I don't think that it's going to be by, you know, very much fewer than that. I think maybe it'll be a 2-touchdown, maybe a 17-point game. But I do think that the Tennessee is able to cover here because Tennessee's offense is just something that Georgia has not seen yet on this season. But again, this is Southeastern CaroLINES, and I'm your host, Caroline Fenton. I'm live from 312 Pizza Company every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. We're streaming on 1025 The Game's socials, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. So make sure to check us out today. Going into the week, if you need a little bit more advice for the end of the day, and I'll be here every Saturday at 10 a.m. But this, to me, I think is going to be one of the most interesting matchups of the day. Number 11, Texas A&M going into Oxford and taking on number 15, Ole Miss. Now, both of these teams are 7-2 coming into this matchup. Last week, Texas A&M held Auburn to just 226 yards and 3 points. Now, that's incredibly impressive. I mean, this pass defense on Texas A&M has been great. The run defense is even better. And it's all kind of working in sync. They're absolutely playing complementary football. And I think that win over Alabama was exactly the spark that Texas A&M needed in their season because they've won every single game since. The offensive line was a massive issue in the first half of the season, and it's still not great. But they allowed Isaiah Spiller and the rest of this run attack to rush for over 200 yards against Auburn, a defense that's incredibly stout. I mean, Texas A&M has a solid run game, but Ole Miss's defense, their run defense, don't let anything through. They cannot stop a nosebleed. I mean, Ole Miss is an incredibly stout offense as well, but Ole Miss does not turn the ball over. They're third in the nation in turnover margins. So this offense is protecting the football, they're airing the football out, and they're putting up big-time numbers. But Texas A&M is on a 4-game winning streak, and I think that trend continues to keep rolling. It's a toss-up game, really, for me here. Texas A&M favored by 2.5 points. But I think I'm going to rock with a better defense, so I am going to take Texas A&M minus the 2.5. Ole Miss is an incredible team with an incredible offense, and I do think that Matt Corral will continue to be in the conversation for the Heisman just for the sheer numbers that he's continued to put up. But I think Texas A&M's defense is just too good here, and I think their offense is clicking at the right time to overcome Ole Miss. And I don't think that it's going to be a blowout by any means on either side of the ball, but I do think that Texas A&M is able to cover the 2.5 here. Number 25, Arkansas, making their way into the college football playoff rankings this week, going into Death Valley, taking on LSU, the real Death Valley, if any Clemson fans you may be watching. Arkansas's favored 2.5 here. Now, LSU's run defense has been fine. They've been fine, but they've been incredibly inconsistent. They dominated Alabama last week. I mean, LSU was 8 yards away from beating Alabama last week. They played their butts off last week. They allowed just 6 total rushing yards against Alabama, but then a few weeks earlier got ripped apart by Ole Miss and Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky put up 330 yards. So LSU, inconsistent run defense. What is KJ Jefferson? He's a running quarterback. So Max Johnson is going to have himself a big-time game. And Coach O announced that he will be splitting snaps with Garrett Nussmeier, the guy behind him on the depth chart after Max Johnson looked pretty spooked in the pocket against Alabama last week. So he's going to have himself a big day. And LSU is not playing terribly by any means. I mean, gave Alabama a huge score. Ole Miss game wasn't great, but wasn't completely out of hand. But it lost the last 4 of their last 5 games. And I think Arkansas had such a great taste of success in the first half of the season. So, I mean, I think that Arkansas really is the better team here. LSU is going to have to play their butts off to keep it close. So I am going to take Arkansas -2.5. I think they're the better quarterback here. And I think the quarterback situation of LSU is just so up in the air. So I do think Arkansas is able to take care of business on the road at Death Valley -2.5. So we'll go back through my picks of the day. I'm taking Mississippi State +5.5 against Auburn at Auburn. I think that Auburn gets the win here, but Mississippi State keeps it close. The way that Will Rogers has been playing, I mean, put up 417 passing yards last week. I mean, he's just been playing his butt off. Georgia at Tennessee, taking the Vols +20.5. I don't think it's going to be an insane blowout, but I do think that Georgia gets it done by 2 touchdowns, maybe 17 points. But I'm going to take the Vols +20.5 here just because this Tennessee offense is something that Georgia's defense has never seen before. But Georgia's defense is just that good. I'm also going to take Texas A&M -2.5 against Ole Miss going into Oxford. I think that Ole Miss, the game being in Oxford, gives Ole Miss a huge advantage here. But Texas A&M is rolling, and I'm going to take the momentum and the better defense here for Texas A&M. Arkansas going into Death Valley and taking Arkansas -2.5. I mean, LSU kept things close with Alabama last week, and I think that's going to be a huge gold star on LSU's schedule. I'm not a big fan of moral victories, but with how much negativity is surrounding LSU's program this year, I think that being able to keep it close against Alabama, a long-time rival, is going to be huge for them. But Arkansas, at the end of the day, I think has the better quarterback. They have the better quarterback situation. KJ Jefferson is a run-first quarterback, and LSU's run defense isn't great, is not great. So those are my picks for the day. I'll be back next Saturday at 10 a.m. live from 312 Pizza Company. Appreciate them, as always, for having me out. And they are hiring. So if you are looking for a little bit of extra cash on the side, if you're looking for a job, they're hiring for host positions, back of house positions, wait staff positions. So make sure to come out to 312 Pizza Company if you are looking for a new opportunity. But that's going to do it for me. Next Saturday at 10 a.m. Southeastern CaroLINES. You can also catch me Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 on Stillman & Company on ESPN 102.5 The Game.